What's up YouTube, it's your boy Lamora back with another YouTube video, and today we're going to be talking about 4 ways that you can make your boss fights more epic. Immediately when I think about an epic boss fight, I'm thinking about God of War. During those quick time events when you're taking down huge monsters, something like Shadow of the Colossus, Dark Souls, Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII, those really big moments where you are encountering something that feels bigger than yourself, but more importantly, the feeling of overcoming those great challenges. So like I mentioned before, boss fights are about, in my opinion, being epic. They're supposed to be the climax of any given storyline that you are in, any given moment. It's the climax of a mission, an adventure that you're on. It's the point where you finally ask your party, can you truly overcome this? The DM takes his gloves off and really throws everything that is reasonable at the party. And a big part of making this boss fight from the DM's perspective really memorable, I think, is about anticipation. It's about the build-up that leads up to the event to begin with. And there are a few ways that you can build up anticipation. One way is to introduce a villain that is a bit more small time that the party is able to deal with as part of another adventure, but then they find out that this villain was just a minion or someone who serves another bigger, badder villain, and in fact what they were doing was part of a grander plot. Even if it's just one villain or if it's more than one, taking down these antagonists one after the other, leading up to the confrontation with finally this big bad, especially if every time the party takes down one of these antagonists, the big bad, the big bad, actually starts to be more harsh along the way, which gives your party time to level up, but also simulates the fact that perhaps this villain is slowly beginning to recognize the party as a threat. Of course, it would be too late if the boss actually ends up being taken down. But really, what is at the heart of that whole idea of introducing antagonist after antagonist that serve under a big bad, the heart of that is just interaction. The party has to be able to interact with your big bad, your boss, before the fight. And there are many ways to do this. You can have the party witness an atrocious act that your boss monster, your big bad, commits in front of the parties. Perhaps while they're powerless because they know they're not strong enough. Maybe they tried and they got their butts kicked. Maybe there's diplomatic immunity and they don't have the political means just yet to deal with this threat. Or instead of actually seeing an atrocity that they witness, instead they could just see the effects of what this big bad has on everything around them. How this boss's actions have changed the terrain. Maybe the forest is larger than it used to be, and there are long, large thorns that burrow out of the ground or coil out of the ground and back into the earth, making the place dangerous to even walk around. Maybe there's a mist that lingers outside. And anyone in the vicinity, perhaps maybe a town or a city, they become a bit more deviant, more prone to madness, doing crazy things because of the aura that this creature, this big bad, creates. The interaction, it would be in the form of a central tension. That is just one way of engaging with a central tension. The antagonist is another way. What this big bag does can affect anything from the price of certain things that your party purchases. Perhaps potions are more expensive because all of the materials that would usually be used to make potions were stolen, or the place that people would usually go to get potions from has since been soiled by the big bad's actions, or because of the big bad's actions. So yeah, interaction is really important. It could be very direct, it could be discussions, it could be actions. Indirect also works as well. If you go with the indirect route, it would help your big bad feel a bit bigger than life. So I would say building anticipation is going to do wonders for the big moment. Before heading into tip number 2, if you're liking the video so far, please leave a like and subscribe. It'll help the tiny channel grow and also help my future videos not get lost in the algorithm. So still in the realm of flavor here, we're going to have the mechanical things a bit later, but I think this one is really important. This is actually my favorite thing to do, which is just using different descriptions that you kind of save for really big moments. Think about what the boss would do in a fight, and think about how to take those simple things that they do and make them feel crazy, make them feel powerful, epic. So for example, instead of just walking 30 feet, your boss disappears and reappears in another place, which would be even scarier if they're supposed to be a colossal sized creature. That would feel crazy. Maybe when they do appear, everyone feels gravity and it feels hard to even move as they slowly turn their heads to meet the person that's about to strike at them. And that's flavor, that's a mechanical thing, but just describing it like that helps add to the moment. Simple things like missing an attack. Maybe your boss doesn't just miss the attack. Maybe as your barbarian swings his axe to meet the boss's sword, those people who are behind the barbarian can feel the wave of force from the two weapons clashing, nearly knocks the wind out of them and puts them flat on their butt. It doesn't have to actually put them prone, but saying that it nearly does and that they stagger and they have to find their balance again really communicates to them that this creature is very powerful. Instead of doing the usual arcane words, eyes glowing and currents of arcane energy and magic flowing around the person or gathering above their palm, something like that, I've used a description where this one spellcaster clawed at the air, and through the cracks came the spell, essentially describing that this creature that's casting the spell just opened up a pocket dimension from which they have an entire arsenal of spells saved up, or they're just tearing a rip in the plane from how powerful their magic casting is. Things like that can add a lot to just the experience itself, and that's what we should be focusing on when it comes to boss encounters, the experience of feeling epic. It doesn't have to be challenging, it just needs to feel epic. Making it challenging is one of the ways that we can do that, so we're going to talk about a more mechanical thing that I tend to do sometimes in my boss encounters, and this will matter to a lesser degree depending on what system you're playing. I play 5e, D&D, and Pathfinder 2nd edition. So for D&D, you could do away with legendary actions for the most part, except for the one that allows them to just succeed on a saving throw. If they failed it, keep that. But throw away the legendary actions, because one action every now and then just isn't enough. What I've been known to do sometimes is actually give the boss more than one turn. Give them 2 to 3 turns. I usually do this when it's just one boss. They don't have minions, it really is the party just fighting them, so I give them 2 to 3 turns. And that means a lot when it comes to certain effects where they might have to do a saving throw at the end of their turn. It changes how things are, it shows that they're more likely to save certain things, and it's harder to lock them down, especially when the monk tries to do the stunning strike. Well, now they have 2 to 3 opportunities to save against it if they've already given up their legendary, I just succeed at a save thing. For Pathfinder, you could do something like that. I'm not sure if legendary actions are a thing in Pathfinder 2nd edition. I just can't remember right now. I've run level 14 monsters. So far I've not seen legendary actions, but I think giving a monster 2 to 3 turns can really go a long way in Pathfinder and will make your boss feel a lot more epic and actually have them a little more equipped to handle the action economy that is one creature, your boss, against 6 PCs. It'll make it more challenging and add to the moment. Every time that they get another turn, you could use some sort of, BS reason, essentially, as to why they're able to do that, or don't. And the party will just understand that this creature means business. So before I go on to the final tip for today's video, I would actually like to know in the comment section, what were your favorite boss fights that you've been in or ran as a DM? Let me know down there. So the last idea that I have, and hopefully this will be a short video, it's meant to be. The last idea is increasing the strength of the boss halfway through the fight. Go a little easy on the party at first. You know that your boss will probably have certain strong abilities, but don't have them use them until halfway through the fight. This will actually allow you to maybe make some or overtune some abilities that they already have. And the balance idea is that, they're using it when they're at half HP, so they won't have a lot of opportunities to really get a lot of value out of these perhaps overtuned abilities, but making it so that perhaps your big bad underestimates the party, and then they get desperate partway through. I've had moments where there was a spellcaster, maybe partway through they felt like their life was threatened, so even though they were only casting illusion spells, they started actually casting things like Fireball at the party. I've had creatures where I essentially had Elise from League of Legends. The party was fighting Elise, a priestess of Lilith, whatever, spider goddess. They were fighting Elise, and halfway through the fight, she turned from her humanoid form into her arachnid form, transformed into an actual giant spider, and the ground, because they were fighting at the top of a mountain, the ground turned into a swirling whirlpool of blood. And instead of having solid ground to be on, they were either swept into the current, where they would take damage, or they would be caught on the web. And they could move on the web, but they would have to make a strength check to actually get their movement. Otherwise, they would lose their movement for that round. Small things like that, changing the terrain, doing that halfway point where either the terrain changes, there are more abilities, the monster's form changes, or they just get different abilities entirely. Things like that really signal to the party that things are amping up and probably they're getting closer to their goals. So that's it. That's all I have for 4 ways that you can make your boss fights more epic in your game. If you end up trying any of these things, let me know in the comments later how they actually ended up turning out in your games. I'm Lamar, and I will see you next week.